Good morning. It is a beautiful day today, and we're going to talk about egalitarian matriarchies today and matrifocal families, because I'm tired of talking about the nuclear family, or the so-called patriarchal nuclear family, as opposed to the actual nuclear family. But the reason that I went into that as far as I did is because I wanted to give you a good example, a good contrast to what we were going to talk about today. So, one of the reasons that I think this is so important is because of some of the statistics that we get in patriarchy, which I will talk about after the families. Let's see. The egalitarian matriarchy. I studied 3 of them relatively closely for my dissertation. And I read articles by women in several others. So I can't say I'm heavily versed in those. But one of the things that I can say is that in my experience, there seemed to be either adherence to or an attempt to adhere to the 4 precepts of matriarchies that I told you about earlier. So, let's see. The 3 that I talked about in my dissertation were the Minangkabau, the Mosuo, and the historic Iroquois. You have to keep in mind that the, I think it's Haudenosaunee is how they say the name they use for themselves. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, and I'm not sure. I think it would be a little rude to keep mispronouncing their name. So for now, I'm going to call them Iroquois, and if anybody knows the right way to pronounce it, please let me know, because I'd love to say the right word, but I'd love to say it correctly too. I have an unusual name, and I know when it's badly mispronounced, it makes me wince every time, so I don't want to do that to an entire people. So, okay. In all 3 of those cases, and in the cases that I read about, there was still an adherence to the matrilineal line, an attempt to follow it in the worst case scenarios, and in the best case scenarios, people actually lived with their matriline. And what this did, I'm going to use the Minangkabau and the Mosuo traditional style of living for my examples, because, let's face it, in every single matriarchy I know about, the patriarchies surrounding them have tried to impose their way of life upon them. This is intriguing. I mean, they seem so desperate to do this that even the situation in which people pair up and have sex amongst the Mosuo, which I will describe later, but is nothing like what we do. The anthropologists call it walking marriage. It has nothing to do with marriage as far as I can tell. I mean, to call that any kind of marriage is to stretch the meaning of the word marriage to the point that I consider it practically broken. I mean, when a word is supposed to cover things that are so diametrically different, I think it kind of loses its meaning a little bit. But we'll go into that later. The Minangkabau and the Mosuo, in the best case scenario, the families do tend to be the mother, her children, her daughters, children, and so on. Boys do not move out. They don't have to, which is significant because it apparently leads to much more emotionally balanced men. That's another study I'll have to tell you about later. I have so much stuff I want to tell you. It's so interesting. Okay. The families tend to try to live in great houses that are their great houses that family lives in. And in fact, apparently that's what the name the Iroquois call themselves translates as the people of the long houses. They live in a large house where the mother, all the children, male and female, and the children of the daughters all live together. And because it's traced along the matriline, what happens is any children belong to the clan of the mother. This is the case for all three of the cultures that I've mentioned, the historic Iroquois. I don't know about the modern day Iroquois. If somebody knows about them, I'd love to talk to you again. Contact me because I'd like to learn more. But the Iroquois, the Minangkabau, and the Mosuo, historic Iroquois, all had families live in their own houses. And the father figure for the children was the brothers of the mothers. So the children did have male role models, but it wasn't their genetic father. Their genetic father belonged to the clan of his mother. What else? The various cultures. Oh, hang on. There we go. Had to make a quick puppy rescue. So children were all raised by the sisters. I don't know if this is the case in all the various cultures, but I know in the Mosuo families, children called their mother, and they also called all their mother's sisters mother as well. And the sisters raised the children together. Now this, I think, is a brilliant idea, because anybody that's tried to raise a child alone can tell you it's a huge job. There's no way one single person can get it done and still be rested and feel healthy and strong themselves. The single mother family is in fact the largest type of family in the United States today, and growing, which I think is kind of tragic. But not that the mothers themselves are tragic, but that our culture has failed them so enormously. But in a culture where all the sisters work together, and all the alloparents work together to raise their children together, then you end up with an extended family where everybody is cared for, where there is no situation that one person hasn't got it in them anymore to take care of the kids. If you're exhausted, you can say to your sister or to your brother, I need a break, and there'll be someone there to help take care of the kids. What else can I tell you quickly about those families? One of the things that this means is that these families are less prone to violence. That was one of the things that really struck me about my dissertation research, is that male violence is a ubiquitous problem in the United States today and in most patriarchal cultures. But I didn't see anything like that. I didn't find any instances of male violence amongst, for example, the Minangkabau. I don't think I found any amongst the Mosuo either. I'll have to go back and look at my dissertation. And the historic Iroquois, the settlers, when I say historic Iroquois, I mean around the time that white men came to the United States. I guess I shouldn't call them settlers, because they kind of invaded the land. That's a different issue we're not going to worry about right now, because I don't know how to most properly do it. But I know that when white people were writing about the Iroquois families, they were struck by how peaceful and egalitarian they were. Keep in mind that this is a time when once a woman married a man in the white culture, all of her property belonged to the man, as did she. This was not the case amongst the historic Iroquois. I remember reading of a woman being startled, a white woman, because an Iroquois woman had just made an arrangement to sell a horse to someone else. And the white woman was like, shouldn't you tell your husband? And the Iroquois woman was, why? It was my horse, you know. So this apparently struck the white women so strongly that several of them preferred to live amongst the Iroquois. Can't really blame them. Much more woman-friendly culture. The other fascinating thing about that is that in order to settle problems, everybody in the family will gather together and have discussions, and they strive for consensus amongst everybody. One of the things that I've heard said or read about these cultures is they want to make sure that everybody has consensus, first of all, because they want everyone to be behind the solution that they've come up with. Everybody will drive towards implementing it with the same conviction. The second thing that I've heard, which I thought was rather clever, is by making sure there's consensus, they haven't created a small faction of dissatisfied people who will try to undermine it. Everybody is behind it, so nobody's upset. Excuse me. Which I thought was actually rather clever on their part. When they have a question that is larger than one family, generally what happens is one man is selected by the women of the family, and that person is the one that goes and talks to the spokesperson for all the other families, and they all talk together. And this is really interesting also. Amongst the Minangkabau, that man is called, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong, again, I apologize, Pengulu. Amongst the historic Iroquois, and from what I've been told, this is still the case today, that man, how does it phrase? He had antlers, as in he was the one that went out. He was the antlered one. I think I've got that right. The Mosuo. I don't remember what that's called for them. I'm sorry. But anyway, so what happens is you have a family, and that family selects their spokesperson. We're going to say spokesperson because different cultures use different names, like I said. And each family has their spokesperson. And then all the spokespeople, which are usually men, all get together and they discuss the problem. And this is interesting for a couple of different reasons, which I think are very cool. First off, the man is presenting the unanimous decision of his family. He is not going to change his mind midway and say, oh, I like this idea better, I'll present that one. If he does something like that, then amongst the Iroquois, he's simply deposed, and that's called the women knocking his antlers off. Amongst the Minangkabau, I don't think I read about anything like that, but I did read that this is a really difficult job. It takes a lot of mildness and friendliness and diplomacy and consideration, the ability to orate convincingly and strongly, to stop and think about issues. And the men who get that job amongst the Minangkabau are said to be like a mother. And that is the highest praise that you can be given, is to be like a mother, which I thought was fascinating. And these men will get together and they speak and they talk to each other. And one of the important parts of these discussions that they have, excuse me, is that someone will speak and then everybody pauses for like a minute or two, I think, because that gives you time to think about what has been said. And that's something that I've noticed is a common problem in our culture, is that frequently You are listening, generalized you, of course, not to understand what the other person is saying, but rather to figure out your dissent to it. And so you listen from a bit, and then you go, oh, I don't agree with this thing. And you're holding it in your mind tightly because you want to object. And so you wait until the person is finished talking. You're not listening as closely to whatever it is they're saying once you have your objection. And the minute they stop talking, you burst forth with your objection, even if it's just to call, okay, I'm glad you're done. Now I want to speak. And so there isn't really a true meeting of the minds as far as I can tell. I admit that's one of the reasons I'm here, is I can blather on about really interesting subjects, and we all have to stop and think, what do I not agree about? Rather than immediately bursting into it. And I hope stuff like this will encourage people to pause on a video and write down the thing that they disagree with, so that they can listen with all their attention when they can go back to the video. I know that's something that I find useful when I have a video that I feel strong emotion about or something like that, because I want to make sure that I truly understand whatever argument it is that they're making. I'm going to pause there because I want to refresh some of my reading and make sure that I'm giving you correct data. I believe so far I have, but I like making sure I've got everything as correct as I can for you. So, more about the families next time, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I love to talk to people in the comments. If you enjoyed this so far, please push the like button. It makes me very happy when that happens. And feel free to subscribe. I love getting new subscribers. I know it sounds silly, but I look at my little count and I go, ee, that's so great. So yeah, I'm easily amused. So have a great day. Thank you very much for your time. Let's talk more next time as well. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.